Let's be honest. In a world that can feel pretty chaotic, where do you find real lasting security? Well, there's this ancient poem, Psalm 91, that gives a pretty radical answer. Think of it as a blueprint for protection in a dangerous world. And today, we're going to dive deep and explore its message, just letting the text itself be our guide.
Right out of the gate, this first line gives us the key to the entire poem. It's not just a beautiful opening, it's the central promise. Look at those two words, dwell and rest. To dwell isn't just visiting, it means you live there, you've made it your home. And the result of choosing to live there, you rest. A state of total peace, even if the world outside is going crazy.
So that brings us to our first section, the promise of shelter. And isn't it interesting that before the psalm mentions a single threat, it starts with this huge declaration. It establishes right away that there's this place of refuge, this shelter, and it's available to anyone who chooses it.
And look at how it's framed. This isn't some vague hope or a maybe. The text states it like it's a fact. Complete security is available. Period. And that kind of bold statement immediately makes you wonder, okay, what dangers are we talking about that would require such a powerful promise? Which, of course, leads us to the next part. If there's this amazing shelter being offered, it must be protecting you from some pretty serious stuff. And yeah, the psalm does not hold back in listing them out.
So what are we up against exactly? As you're about to see, the text gives us a whole inventory of fears that, even though they were written thousands of years ago, feel incredibly relatable today. I mean, look at this list. It covers pretty much every category of fear you can imagine. You've got the sudden, obvious attacks, the arrow or the lion. You've got the hidden traps you don't see coming, like a hunter's snare. And then you've got the invisible threats, the things that cause so much anxiety today, the pestilence and plague that you can't see or control.
So what you end up with is this complete picture of human anxiety. The poem covers dangers you can see and dangers you can't, day and night. It's basically acknowledging that, hey, trouble doesn't operate on a 9-to-5 schedule. It can come from anywhere, at any time.
And to really hammer home just how big this danger is, the psalm paints this dramatic picture. Imagine a disaster so huge that 1,000 people fall right next to you. It's an image of just overwhelming catastrophe. And then, as if that weren't enough, it escalates 10 times more, 10,000. But right in the middle of that staggering chaos, the promise is rock solid. It will not come near you. The crazy scale of the danger just makes the power of the protection seem that much bigger. Okay, so how is this protection actually described? Well, the psalmist doesn't just give us one image. It uses a whole series of powerful metaphors, a fortress, feathers, and a shield to show us a defense that's multi-layered and complete.
Early on, the writer uses these two words, refuge and fortress. And the difference is really telling. A refuge is a safe place you run to. It's about retreat. But a fortress, that's a stronghold you defend from. That implies strength. So the protection is both a safe place to hide and a strong place to stand. Then the imagery just does a complete 180. We go from the cold, hard stone of a fortress to something incredibly tender and personal, the feathers and wings of a bird. This gives you a feeling of intimate, gentle care, you know? Like a mother eagle shielding her young from a storm. The text also throws in shield and rampart. A rampart is just a big defensive wall. So if you put all these images together, fortress, wings, shield, rampart, you get this picture of a complete defense system that's both incredibly strong and deeply personal. But, and this is a huge but, this incredible protection isn't just automatic. The psalmist is very clear that it's conditional. There's a human role to play in this whole thing, and that's what this next section is all about, the condition of trust. So the path to this shelter has 4 key steps. First, you have to dwell there, right? It's your permanent address, not a vacation spot for emergencies. Second, you have to say it. You have to actually declare your trust out loud. That's connected to the third part, the internal feeling of trust. And finally, you have to acknowledge his name, which back then meant way more than just knowing a name. It meant you knew their character, their reputation. It implies a real relationship.
So you see the dynamic here. It's not a one-way street. It's relational. It's basically saying, if you choose to dwell, to say and to trust, then the promise of protection is unlocked. Divine action is directly linked to human faith. It's a two-way relationship. And that relationship brings us to the climax of the entire psalm. In the last few verses, the poem does something absolutely incredible. The narrator's voice fades out, and a new voice takes over. God himself starts speaking directly. And just listen to how God's own words perfectly mirror the human side of the deal we just talked about. Because he loves me, for he acknowledges my name. The human commitment is met with a divine guarantee straight from the source. I will rescue him. I will protect him.
And the rewards promised here are, wow, they go so far beyond just surviving. We're talking about a totally transformed life. Being heard when you call, feeling a divine presence during the hard times, not just after. It's about honor, a long, fulfilling life, and ultimately, salvation. It's a promise that covers the whole journey and the final destination.
This structure is just brilliant. The psalm starts with a human describing their trust, and it ends with God declaring the reward. That final shift to God's own voice is like the ultimate seal on the deal, guaranteeing every single promise made in the text.
Which leaves us with one last thing to think about. This psalm talks about arrows, plagues, and lions. Our fears today might look more like financial collapse, online threats, or global pandemics. The words are ancient, but that core human need for a safe place, for shelter, that hasn't changed at all. So the question it leaves us with is this. In our modern world, with our modern anxieties, what does a shelter really look like today?